Hello, everyone. I had someone write into me just the other day, and they were talking to me or asking me about this shaking that they had. So they said, I'm an ex-Jehovah's Witness, and I was in a church, and I was just shaking. Like, I just couldn't stop the shaking. And he wanted to talk about it, and I said, listen, first of all, just so you know, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, I'm a life coach. My name is Elle. I am an ex-Jehovah's Witness life coach, just so you all know. But I said, have you ever heard of exposure therapy? And he was like, what's that? And so we talked a little bit about that, and I said, listen, I don't know all the things to it, but what I do know is that we all have irrational fears because that's part of our parasympathetic nervous system, right? That it's like we have this reaction. For him, it was like walking in a church. It was like being in a church. His body was like, oh my gosh. Maybe he was thinking something like, Jehovah's going to strike me down, or, or I'm going to die at Armageddon. I mean, that was probably his body's reaction to that thought in his mind. And if somebody has a phobia, like we kind of had a phobia, we kind of had a full-on phobia to churches, to anything that wasn't Jehovah's Witness, especially when it came to religion. And so now that we're feeling that fear, it doesn't mean stop anymore. And this you can use with church stuff, with the witness stuff, or just in anybody's regular life. Oh. So when we're experiencing this fear, and we can sort of name it like, oh, this is fear. It's like we're actually acknowledging it, like, oh, this is what fear feels like, because there's two different feelings that you can have. You can have the feeling of fear, or what we experience a lot of times is our resistance to the fear. So do you remember when you became a public speaker or you became a publisher? Do you remember how afraid you were and you pushed past the fear and you did it anyways? And we did it to save lives. We did it because we love Jehovah. It feels weird saying that. We did it because it was like something like bigger than ourselves, And what if you could be the person that you do it for your future self or your highest good? What if you could push past your fears and do it anyways for the future you? What would that be like? Because if you think about it, when you have fear, like my friend had the shaking, or it could be maybe it's like a tingling, or maybe your heart starts racing and you're just like, oh, that could be the feeling of fear. And how sad is it that we would just try to avoid that feeling as much as possible and avoid doing things that might be a little bit scary or different, and instead like just self-soothe, like, oh, that's too much, this one feeling, when it's actually just a vibration in your body that people are running from. They're running from that feeling, when actually feeling the feeling is not the worst thing. Resisting it is way worse. What do you do when you're resisting fear? Or what do you do? Maybe you're trying to cover up fear. Have you noticed? Like, tune into it next time, because what's going to happen is when you are feeling like everything is so life and death, remember when we used to feel like that? We did feel like, going into another church probably meant death. And when we look at our fears in life now, is it actually life or death? Because most of the time it's not. It's not a life or death situation to even try to run from. But feeling the pain, it's almost like it's worse, the fear of the feeling. The fear of the feeling of the pain is worse than the actual fear. And so when we're going to embrace the fear, just bring it in. Come on in, fear. Come on in. We're going to do it anyways. Embrace it. That's when you're really going to start to feel the fullness of life. Because if we're waiting to feel good all the time, it's just not possible. It's not going to happen. I mean, we were told that that's the way we should feel. And so a lot of us, we pretended and we smiled and we faked our way through it, but it wasn't actually true happiness. So I'm just wishing you all the best. And it's normal to be afraid of things. We should be afraid of things, but we have to ask ourselves, is it a rational fear, a rational fear, or is it an irrational fear? Because if it's irrational, it's not actually life or death, it's just a little bit scary, then you're going to want to try to push yourselves. And especially as ex-witnesses, there's a lot of things that we haven't tried. Just this past couple weeks ago, I was invited to this little Christmas get together, and they said, well, it's going to be a Christmas pajama party, and just bring your come in your Christmas pajamas. And I'm like, I don't have Christmas pajamas. I've never even bought a pair of Christmas pajamas. It's so cool, like doing things for the first time. So yeah, get out there and do new things. Like I need to I don't have a fear of buying Christmas pajamas, but we have a lot of firsts to celebrate. And there's a lot of things that we haven't done before. And we have to embrace it and like, let's go for it. Let's not wait another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however long it's going to be. We can do those things. We can do those things now. Don't wait. And it might be a little bit scary at first, but the more that you do it, like this exposure therapy that I was talking to him about, the little by little, the little bit we could do it, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then before you know it, it's like, oh, this is not a problem. Because when I look back on my life, when I was disfellowshipped at 16 years old, and then to be 49 years old now, wow, so much has happened. So much has happened over those years. And I came, I was kicked out, and then I came back, and then disfellowshipped, and then back in. And, but this, oh, the shunning, it was really, really rough on me. And it took me a while of exposing myself to different things for me to feel comfortable with it. But if you don't do it and you resist and you're like, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do it, then it's just going to get harder and harder and harder. And then you're going to keep feeling, the resistance to the fear. Whereas if you just felt the fear and you're like, okay, I know there's just going to be this tingly sensation and my body is going to be freaking out, but I know it's irrational. Like, it's okay for me to go to a church, and then you do it anyways. Can you imagine how you're going to feel afterwards? So good. And then little by little, when you keep exposing yourself, oh, I'm going to go to church on Sunday, or I'm going to go do this, I'm going to try out this, I'm going to say yes to this. And you keep doing that, you're going to keep exposing yourself. And before you know it, over time, you will, the fear will just disappear. It won't be there anymore. It's not going to be there every single time. So I hope that helps you today. Thinking of you, it's this rainy, cold day today. But it's good to be talking about these things with the holidays and everything. And I just want to offer to you, if you ever needed to talk to somebody and you want to sort of work out, irrational fears, or why do I do this? I wish I would do this and I don't do this, or like I am doing this thing and I wish I could do it differently, or there's so many things in life, like goals coming up, goal setting. Inside of my women's group, I designed a workshop that we're going to be taking at the end of the month. And in this workshop, we're going to be planning out our goals for 2025. And it's not actually a goal. It's how do I describe it? It's like we're going to condense the whole thing, like our whole vision, basically, of the whole year. We're going to condense it down into one word. So that's the surprise. But we're going to be doing that inside of the women's group. So if you're interested in joining, I'll put the link in the more section. If you go under more, you can click on that, and then you're going to see different things there. If you're interested in joining just to take the workshop and really envision life for yourself in 2025. I mean, can you imagine what would happen in 2025 if you felt the fear and you did it anyways? I'm gonna tell you a story. If you're here till the end, you know it always gets better towards the end. I did a fear. I did something that was very fearful. A few years ago, I went down to the Florida Keys and I went snorkeling. I am so scared of the water, and let me tell you, when I jumped in, we weren't just like, it wasn't shallow water. We were like out in the middle of it felt like in the ocean, and this catamaran, and oh my gosh. And it was my first time snorkeling, and the waves were really big. And I was like, you know what? You're going to do this. You're going to do this, Elle. You're not going to die. I know you're not going to die. Everything is going to be fine. And I was so scared. And I had on this wetsuit and the flippers and the goggles and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I jumped in, and I couldn't quite keep, because the waves were coming up, I couldn't quite keep myself down to even see. I don't think I even saw anything. And I was just like a big baby out there in the water, and I ended up getting scooped back up. I'm not scooped up. I scooped myself up and put myself back on the boat. And somebody, I think my boyfriend did grab my hand, and oh my gosh. But you know what? I went snorkeling. I went snorkeling, and I can only imagine how I looked out there. Oh my gosh, But I'm so happy that I did. And my first time snorkeling, I didn't see hardly anything, but I definitely did it. Oh, and that just feels so good to say, And I didn't die. I'm still here. But if I would have been so scared that I wouldn't have done that, I couldn't tell you that story today. And I would have probably wondered, what would that have been like? And maybe I would have beat myself up like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have been so scared. And oh man, I hope I get the opportunity again. Like, don't let life pass you by. Don't let it pass you by. All right, everyone. Well, it's so good to see you. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. All right. Bye, everyone.